Hello and welcome to Africa Thrive Live. My name is Irene Okoye. I'll be your host for today. I am so excited to get started on our conversations for today because I feel like they are a timely conversation to be having right now. And not only right now, but emotional wellness and inner thriving is important in every season, I believe. So before I get started on the topic, I really want to know who is watching, where you're watching us from. And please, on the comment section, tell us who you are, what area of business you're in. Just share a little bit about yourself, engage with us, because this show is about you. And before I go any further, if you're watching us on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you're welcome to this show. It's about you, like I said. So from a really cold Johannesburg, I'm very happy to be with you today. And in case you're wondering who AMI is, or you haven't had interaction with us before, and you're just curious to know a little bit about us, African Management Institute is a Pan-African social enterprise that is passionate about enabling ambitious businesses like you across our beautiful continent to thrive. And we believe that we exist to support you in your entrepreneurial journey, whatever season you're in, whatever stage of growth you're in. AMI is passionate about working with you. And in case you're wondering, okay, what else and how else can you support me? We've got an array of programs at the moment that you can take hold of, plug into. They are free, of course, and they're going to help you during this season, during the COVID pandemic and beyond. Like I said, we aim to help you to thrive, not just now and not just during the pandemic. It's also beyond. So one of the programs that we have is Rise, and we'll get into the program and we'll speak a little bit about it later. But it's basically designed with entrepreneurs in mind to help you navigate through your own personal wellness as we think about the COVID pandemic in context and beyond. So that's one of the programs that you can plug into. It's free. You can go to our website and register for the program. It's also available on our AMI Learn app. Another really exciting program is obviously, it's not a program, but it's actually one of our most useful resources that you can get hold of. It is curated with entrepreneurs in mind. It gives you resources on what's going on around Africa. So if there are opportunities, whether funding related or any other opportunities that you would like to get hold of, this is such a great resource and a tool that you could subscribe to on our website. So feel free to do so. It's a weekly newsletter, jam-packed with interesting things that we are doing as AMI, but also what is happening across our continent. And finally, of course, you can get and plug into Africa Thrive Live, which is our weekly, and we hope to do this every single week, series that talks to entrepreneurs about their journey and also puts everything into context. Like I said, this show is about entrepreneurs and helping entrepreneurs navigate through the entrepreneurial journey. Just as I take a breath and think about, the topic that we are going to be discussing in a brief moment, I still want to know who we're speaking to. So please feel free to reach out, send us a comment, post something. As my colleague would say, please use as many emojis as you can. Those are at your disposal. So please tell us where you're from, where you're watching us from, and if there's any questions that you may have about the topic that we're going to discuss today. So before I introduce our speakers for today, I thought about bringing this conversation in context. And there's a lot that's happening in our world today. There is so much that, most our realities are very real. I forgive the pun. And thinking about how to start this, I thought about some of the books and people who inspire me personally. And one of my favorite authors is Elaine Welteroth. So she speaks about, in her book, More Than Enough, she speaks about a period in her life where she literally collapsed because she could not function. So she was going through meeting to meeting, which is some of our realities, and not even having time to catch a breath. So lunch or food was not even part of her her diary. So she kept moving from one meeting to another, and it got to a point where she was losing a lot of weight. So she decided, okay, I'm going to go see a doctor just to get a perspective of what's happening. And she went into the doctor's office, and the doctor looked at her, asked her a few questions, and the doctor was like, I think you need to take a break. I think you need rest. In her mind, and thinking about all the goals that she has and the many things that she's hoping to do, she could not see this as a possibility. But anyway, she went on with a rat race like most of us do, until she got to a point where she literally crashed. She couldn't get out of bed. She couldn't eat. So the turnaround for her was when she decided, okay, enough is enough. I need to prioritize myself. Self-care is important. And one of the quotes that I love from a book, her book is by Irene Okoye. And she says, there's no glory in a grind that literally grinds you to dust. So I'm just going to repeat that because I love it. It says, there's no glory in a grind that literally grinds you down to dust. That's a quote by Irene Okoye in Elaine's book. And another lady that I think about that has written also great books, and she talks about thriving, which is the essence of this discussion today, is Arianna Huffington. So she writes about the sleep revolution. So I was reading about the sleep revolution and what inspired it. And in her books and in the different articles, she talks about the fact that she collapsed in her office and broke her cheekbone. So that was a turnaround moment for her. So just like Elaine, she was going through 18 hours without literally stopping. She was up and about. So I know you're thinking, okay, but this is a reality for other people. Maybe it's not where I'm at right now. But just bringing it closer home, at the moment we are, dealing with the pandemic. We have entrepreneurs and business people who are having to face the realities of closing their businesses. They are looking at, is there a certainty beyond where they are right now? We are dealing with people who are also dealing with their own emotional difficulties, whether we're talking about people who are being retrenched at the moment, people who are taking pay cuts, families who are now faced with the realities of having to bury their loved ones in ways that they never thought possible. I don't know if any of you watching this thought that we would be in a period where we would have to bury our loved ones, sometimes having funerals on Zoom. That would be the only way because of the limitations that we have based on the different restrictions that we have in the different countries that we live in. And people are dealing with loss, whether it's jobs, whether it's loved ones. There's just so much uncertainty. And, some parents are having to find a balance between working from home and also homeschooling their children. So there's so much happening. There's so much happening that I would think most of us need to pause and reflect and for once put ourselves at the core. I completely believe that everything we do as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, starts with us in taking care of ourselves. So before I go any further, I would love to introduce my panelists for today. The first one is Jonathan Cook. He is the co-founder and chairman of AMI. And we have, yes, thanks.
Hi, Irene.
Hi, Jonathan. I'm so happy to speak to you. I've spoken to you a lot of times in a lot of instances, but I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell people what a co-founder of AMI is as an entrepreneur and your journey so far, and just why this topic is important today.
Thanks, Irene. Right, so I'm a psychologist by profession. I've been in management education for about 30 decades. And have been an entrepreneur on the side, in a sense, until I left GIBS Business School, where I was director about 6-7 years ago, to co-found AMI. So I'm a psychologist. I've been an academic and an entrepreneur in AMI, and before that, and currently in Thornhill Associates, that does online 360-degree feedback questionnaires. This is an important topic because not only is it important for our own emotional health and our physical health and our spiritual health, but for our business health as well. We're in business. People are our business in so many ways. It's very true in AMI, and but it's true in every business, I think. So I think this topic that you've introduced to us is really critical.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And the next person that I would love to introduce is Candice Clark. She is the founder and MD of Dynamic Talent. I'm in the midst of founders today, so I'm quite excited to have this energy. So I'm hoping that the next time we speak, I'll be founding something. So I think it's really great. Yeah, I should be an entrepreneur as well. I love that I'm in the midst of entrepreneurs. Candice, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business and your journey so far. And why is this topic so relevant in your perspective?
Okay, thanks, Irene. Thank you for the invite, MI. So I'm an entrepreneur, been an entrepreneur since I was 16, but I'm also a yoga therapist and a counselor. I use yoga therapy and counseling in pro bono work, but my business, Dynamic Talent, which I founded and have been running now for 4 years, including an acquisition that happened last year, so now it's part of a bigger group of companies, is essentially an embedded talent consultancy, an embedded technology talent consultancy. So we work predominantly with technology startups and large in-house technology teams. And it's not a recruitment agency. So a lot of people think that it's a recruitment agency, but it isn't. Essentially, it is a talent consultancy that can be hired by the hour. It's grown really quickly. And in terms of why this topic's important to me, alongside sort of quick business growth and entrepreneurial journey, I myself have gone through a burnout. So what Irene was speaking about earlier happened to me a number of years ago, and brought on all sorts of health challenges that really got me to dig deep. And that's how I landed up becoming a yoga therapist. So I found a lot of healing in mindfulness and meditation and yoga in particular, and went on to qualify as a yoga teacher and now a yoga therapist. So this is an interesting conversation for me to be part of, because it's really at the intersection of being an entrepreneur all the time, but especially during COVID-19, and particularly in an industry like talent acquisition and talent management and retention that's been hit very hard, much like industries in tourism and other places that have really been hit very hard. So I've had to use all these skills I've developed over a number of years through my own healing and yoga, particularly in the last couple months. So it's an interesting conversation for me to be part of, and just provide support and insight where I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Candice. We'll be meeting Betty Mahugu much later. She is also a founder and president of Go Travels and Tours. So we'll speak to her about her experience and how she's prioritizing emotional wellness. But just to kick off and just break it down to people, because, it may sound like we're talking about a lot of fluff and wishy-washy feelings, but I just want to get into the intricate details about what emotional well-being is. What are we talking about when we talk about inner thriving, emotional wellness? And I want to throw this to Jonathan. What exactly are we talking about? And I would love for you to start with just broadly describing what is wellness, and then we can get into emotional wellness. And yeah, I'll get your thoughts as well, Candice.
Thanks, Irene. Wellness, I think, has 4 aspects to it, of which emotional wellness is one. The other are physical wellness, and they are integrated. You can't really have one without the other. So physical wellness, enough sleep, enough a proper diet, enough exercise. Then spiritual wellness, which might be religious but might not be. It's a sense of meaning in life. Meaning is so important. If we have a why to life, as someone once said, we can endure almost anyhow. Then the fourth one I'd like to add to it is not a personal one, but it's the community, because particularly our emotional welfare is really, really, really linked up with our relationships. The people feed us, they support us, they keep us on track, so to speak, and we in turn have a huge impact on others. And if there's time, I'd love to talk more about the relationship aspect of mental and emotional wellness. And emotional wellness is not just feeling good, which is part of it, but having resilience, having the ability to understand and harness and process one's emotions and use those as energy to achieve the ends that we have.
Thanks for that. Candice, in your perspective, how would you describe emotional well-being?
So I think emotional wellness to me is really the ability to face the present moment, whatever it is. And sometimes it can be really devastating and sometimes it can be incredibly exciting, but to be able to move through the present moment in a present way, so in a very grounded, centered way, and really to be able to so emotional wellness and being emotionally well, if I can say that in inverted commas, is being able to integrate and make meaning of what's happening. So be able to face it, process it, make meaning of it, and integrate it. Because a lot of what happens, and just to take this back to yoga and yoga therapy, but a lot of what happens is when we are faced by a moment we don't like or we don't want, to use polyvagal theory as an example, we go into fight or flight mode. So we go into a state of it, or a lot of us can go into a state of anxiety, can be triggered by the situation, and that happening in a repeated way can lead to a state of collapse, which is often what burnout is, where you basically have no more energy left. You have nothing more in the well to give. So emotional wellness to me is how do we stop that from happening? So how do we protect ourselves from constantly being in a fight or flight state and potentially landing up in a state of collapse? So Jonathan spoke about resilience, and that's absolutely true. Like, how do we build resilience for when those situations arise? And I think part of what's happened in the pandemic, and I've seen this across multiple teams now, is that mental health challenges and emotional wellness challenges that already existed, they have just been amplified in the current situation, or there's been trauma that's been caused by the current situation. So mental health and emotional wellness is at the front of everything now. And, I watched this, and this will be my last point, I promise, Irene.
Keep going.
I'm actually at 12 giving a talk at a client about stress management, and I watched a very funny video about a fire drill. And so this health and safety officer had told everybody the fire protocol, but nobody had listened to him, basically. So then he decided, well, now I'm going to do the fire drill. So it's not true. It's a funny video. And he does this fire drill, and everybody just loses it. There's somebody climbing into the roof. There's somebody throwing a printer out the window. There's somebody that's been hiding a cat that pulls the cat out and wants to run away with the cat. There's somebody that just passes out. And it just made me think, the pandemic, nobody saw this coming. There was no preparation. There was no, so we in the situation now with whatever preparation we've done on our own emotional wellness to this point. And for some of us, this might be a brand new topic. So we're building resilience in the face of a global pandemic. That's a whole different level to what it was 6 months ago. So to me, emotional wellness is not something you either have or you don't. It's something that can be built and can be developed even in the situation we're in at the moment if you're finding it particularly hard. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Candice. I still want to bring in the audience in this discussion. So please do feel free to comment, share those emojis, tell us where you're watching from. If there's any questions for our panelists, feel free to throw them in. And I hope we'll get through the questions within the course of the show. Something that you've brought up, Candice, and I want to go back to you because I find it quite interesting. I'm really interested in it. It's about, being present and wherever you are. So one of my favorite quotes is, wherever you are, be all there. And I find that most of us are not able to be 100% anywhere. And I'm just wondering, does a perfect balance exist? Jonathan spoke about the different aspects of wellness. I'm just wondering, is there a time that you can say, I feel like I'm at an equilibrium in terms of my health, my mental wellness, emotional wellness, my physical, my spirituality. Is there a perfect balance? Does that exist? And I'll get your thoughts on that, Jonathan, as well.
It's a very complicated question. I'm trying to think of the right way to respond, because there's a lot that I can say to what you've just said, Irene. But I think no. So the perfect balance doesn't exist. I think it depends where we are in our life and what we're needing to be able to be resilient. So I'm spending a lot more time in meditation and prayer than I ever have. And that's because that's what the situation is demanding from me at the moment. So maybe it's not so much a perfect balance of a recipe, like you always need this, this, and this. Maybe it's more an awareness of where you're at, what life is asking of you, and being able to respond to that in a really healthy way. And that awareness starts with practicing things like meditation and mindfulness, because when you, and even if it's just 5 minutes a day, and in fact, the ancient yogis that were sort of the founding fathers of yoga, they speak about rather do 5 minutes of yoga a day than 2-hour sessions of yoga a week. And I really resonate with that, because when you practice something like mindfulness and meditation on a daily basis, you are aware of what a grounded, centered state feels like daily. You're reminded of it. So when something pulls you out of that, or you have an experience that you realize, I'm being triggered, maybe it's a past trauma that's being triggered, maybe it's just I haven't had breakfast and my stomach's empty and I'm interpreting it as anxiety. But there's all these things that can happen, but you start to be more aware of, right, I'm moving out of feeling grounded. How do I move back into that? Or what do I need to be able to face this present moment in a grounded way, as opposed to a reaction? Does that answer the question? And it was quite a complicated question, so I just I've answered it.
No, I love it. I love it, because you're alluding to a toolbox that we always get into. I feel like it's a toolbox that we reach into so that we can react to whatever is happening. So without not actually react, that we can be more proactive to whatever is happening around us. Jonathan, any thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with Candice. I think that's absolutely right. There isn't a perfect balance, and there are at least two problems with trying to find that perfect balance. One is, it came up some years ago in the work-life balance that was very popular. I never liked the term, because it suggested that you had to compete between work or life, and work is life. It's half of life, if you like. People and work are what makes life meaningful. So if you try to balance between the two, you might be holding yourself back, which just becomes a negative spiral sometimes. So rather engage fully with the whole of life and prioritize. So it's not that I'm going to stop working in order to spend some time with my family, but I'm going to spend time with my family, which I can't work while I'm doing it. So that's good. It's a positive entering in with energy into whatever that we're going to do. So prioritizing and sort of a daily and a weekly reflection on what should I be doing is a good way of prioritizing. The other problem with trying to seek the perfect balance is it's perfectionism again. And entrepreneurs on the whole the research shows that we're not all that emotionally healthy as a whole. We kind of drive ourselves. People are driven. And there's this, you would relate to that, Candice, there's this need to be perfect and to be better. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's good to be driven. It's good to have energy. But underlying that needs to be an acceptance of oneself. And self-acceptance is something that most of us grow up without for all sorts of reasons. Carl Rogers, the great psychologist, spoke about unconditional, positive regard. When we regard other people and ourselves positively, unconditionally. In other words, we don't have to earn our worthwhileness. We can earn results. We can earn all sorts of good things. But ultimately, the mental health comes from the assurance that I'm okay. I don't have to do anything to earn your love or the love of whoever's most important to me. And if we can offer that to ourselves and to other people, we can cope with almost any of the crises that come our way. So don't try to balance, try to be whole, and try is probably the wrong word. Just just accept yourself, and from that basis of wholeness, then work hard.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jonathan. I'm just thinking, an entrepreneur who's probably watching this is thinking, do I really have it in me? How does this contribute to my bottom line? You know, another business leader who's probably watching this is thinking, oh, now you're asking me to give my people more time to, you know, bring their whole self. So I call it bringing your whole self to work, because a lot of us are broken, you know, and a lot of us are going through so much. Like I alluded in my insights at the beginning when I was talking about loss and so many things that are happening, so many complexities right now. And I'm just wondering, is this a detraction from the bottom line? Are we telling people now, you know, yes, you have, you know, a bottom line, that at the end of the month, this is how much you want to make. Your revenue is important to you. But where does emotional wellness and basically wellness lie in the workplace? I'm hoping, let's start with you, Candice, especially from the HR and talent space. I'm just wondering, how are businesses feeling about this? Is it something that they're open to right now? I know a lot of people are pushing the whole idea of starting with empathy and pushing a perception of empathy is really important right now. But is it just a right now moment? Is it something that we just do right now? Or is it something that we need to inculcate in how we do business?
It's so interesting. I've seen so many different responses. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I was thinking earlier, I should really write a book about the COVID-19 pandemic. And
we will hold you accountable to that. The next Africa Thrive Live, we're hoping to be launching your book.
Just how I've seen different leaders deal with it, because I work with startups, I work with enterprises, and across Europe, across Africa. Mostly technology businesses, so software development businesses, but yeah, it is really interesting to see how different people have handled it. I think there's two things to me that have stood the test of time pre-COVID and still stand the test of time in COVID. The one is, you cannot hold space for your people if you cannot first hold space for yourself. Leaders that are pushing wellness, wonderful. But what are you doing about your own wellness first? And I push that message a lot. So that's the first point. It will be difficult to implement anything around emotional wellness if you don't hold that true to yourself and have some kind of meaning attached to that. And then the second thing is a mindset of hope and a mindset of opportunity cannot exist with a mindset of scarcity. It just can't. Those two things cannot coexist. So what I mean by that is, and there's a beautiful analogy that I learned from one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Gilbert, and she speaks about this research they've done on ants. And you get desert ants and you get jungle ants. And literally it's ants that live in the jungle and ants that live in the desert. And she was saying ants that live in the desert, they are very still until something good happens, and then they move. Because they have an environment of scarcity, right? So they conserve their energy and then they move. Makes sense. Ants that live in a jungle, because they live in an environment of abundance, they keep moving until something bad happens. They don't stop. And what's really stuck with me as a business owner is that I need to be very, very disciplined about doing activities that help me cultivate a mindset of hope and of opportunity and of abundance. Because what happens when I do things or I stop doing those things, I land up with a mindset of scarcity, and then all that happens is my brain just confirms that, the recruitment industry is down. So do you think I spot any opportunities with that mindset? Can I do any creative problem solving? Can I motivate my team to face the odds? No, I cannot. So for me, that stood the test of time. If you are wanting to grow your business, scale your business, see opportunity, come into sales meetings fired up and get your clients excited, how do you do that if you're feeling down? If you're feeling like no opportunity, you can't. So I've watched my competitors, sadly, lose opportunities to us. And purely because we are going into these meetings optimistic and spotting opportunities and looking for growth and being excited. And our clients are like, but aren't you guys struggling? like, isn't this hard? And I'm like, yeah, like it's down, but you know what? So the economy's protracted by 5%. That means there's still 95% of the business out there. Like, you know, so cultivating hope and opportunity in our minds is like, Irene, I can't actually, I mean, you can see I'm on my soapbox now. I can't actually emphasize that enough. Like, that will be the difference between the leaders that survive this and the businesses that survive this and those that don't, in my opinion.
Thanks, Candice. Man, this is really getting deep, but I don't want to just have this conversation on my own with my lovely panelists. So I want to hear where you're from, where you're tuning in from, and if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to share that on either Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, wherever you're watching from. We're looking forward to answering those questions. Jonathan, from your experience, what do you think? Is there a place for this kind of discussion when we're talking about the bottom line? When you're sitting with investors and you're trying to say, I have prioritized the wellness of my people, so it may not reflect in the profits, but this is the value that I bring in form of my people. So do you think that we're ready for those discussions? Are we there yet? Are we having those discussions?
No, we need them, and I think it does reflect in the bottom line. It's not a compromise. There are times when you might want to spend something and use up some of your margin for people things, but in the end, people are our business. We need people as colleagues, as staff. We need people as suppliers. We need people as customers, obviously, and investors and all the rest of it. If you don't have sound relationships with other people, you don't have a business. And as Candice has said, if you're not looking after yourself, you don't really have the ability to look after other people. So we need wellness all around. So I'm absolutely convinced. And I think investors look very closely at the people, and not just at the qualifications, but at the culture, at the interaction, at the energy that Candice was referring to. So it's an investment in what we so often say is our most important resource. But not just our staff. It's, as I say, it's the customers and all the rest of it. So there's no question, I think, that it contributes to the bottom line. And even if it didn't, it'd be worth doing because of quality of life. But it really does contribute, and it makes people more efficient. Same with sleep. You know, if you don't get enough sleep, you think you're working harder, but you're actually working less effectively. So we need to look after ourselves. And that doesn't mean being soft, in the sense that a concern for wellness should go with a concern for performance and for results. Right through the management literature, and in fact, going back thousands of years in philosophies and religions, the two dimensions that keep recurring are, one is a dimension for performance, for getting things done, for demand, if you like, and the other one for acceptance and caring and looking after the people side of things. If you have the people side only, you have very happy people who do nothing. If you go for performance only, you have for a while, very hardworking people who either leave you or burn out, and it doesn't work either. You want to keep those two not compromised, but supporting each other.
That's really good.
Absolutely. And just anecdotally, I'm sorry, Irene, just anecdotally to add on to what Jonathan's saying, I mean, I can see that in businesses. So I can see the differences in the businesses that have prioritized emotional wellness during the time and those that haven't, and it's reflecting 6 months later.
I like that you brought that up, because my next question was going to be, are you noticing something at the moment in terms of the businesses that you're working with and how they're relating to their team? So are there trends that you can see or you've spotted that are either giving you a warning sign that something needs to be done about people and their wellness, or could be positive or negative trends that you have observed with the businesses that you've worked with?
So if I had to think of, if I reflect on the last few months and practically what's worked versus what's not worked, leaders that are not sweeping this under the carpet are getting better responses from their people. So they straight away are acknowledging, okay, guys, this is hard. I get that you're working from home. I get that your kids are interrupting you. You maybe don't have care at home. Like, how can we make this work? Maybe you just need an hour to vent. Their team cohesion and productivity has increased. So it's interesting in that leaders that have chosen to sweep it under the rug and say, right, performance matters. I'm not going to talk about this because I'm scared it's going to make, like Jonathan was saying, make people soft and not. It's actually had the opposite effect, where people have not felt they can bring their whole selves to work. As you've mentioned, Irene, they don't feel connected with their colleagues. They haven't had an opportunity to create meaning during the pandemic and reach out and increase social engagement. They've just taken a backseat from their teams and they've gone, okay, well, it's just about work, so I'm going to do work, where we know that the health of the people is actually what helps the work get done better.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the one trend I can see is worked versus not worked. I think from the beginning, organizations that have been very clear about and disciplined, creating structures around the new normal, right? So they very quickly got on to distributing policies on flexible work and remote working. They made it very clear what the expectations were in an empathetic way. So we get, for example, that working hours don't exist anymore. This is how we suggest you manage it, and that this is what's expected versus not expected. There's been some organizations that just haven't done that, and it's left the teams feeling a bit like, well, I can get called at 6 p.m. for a meeting, but can I go for lunch at 12? Like, so does it work both ways? I don't know. And it's created confusion. And then again, that affects productivity and cohesion and effectiveness, and can also create a bit of resentment towards the leadership team, because maybe the leaders are thinking, yes, it's fine, go to gym at 12 or what, but actually, it's not being communicated. So that's one thing. The other thing is creating support structures around emotional support and wellness has been really important. So, for example, being very clear with your team if they need trauma debriefing, where they get that from. If they need counseling, where do they go to for that? If they need an anonymous line, perhaps they don't want to speak to a leader, where do they go? So being very clear on what those options are from the start has been really important. And the team members that have accessed those things have had, I've seen again, just with our clients, have had amazing results just in terms of having a space to talk and process what they're going through. And then the last thing I think that's been really helpful for clients that I've seen is having set up a central wellness hub. So that could be through a certain communication channel. It could be an app. They've done it differently. But basically, this is a place where people can come together, share resources, talk about what's going on. Again, that creation of meaning, Jonathan and I have both referred to during the pandemic. It's a really important thing for emotional wellness. Like, how am I handling it? How am I processing it? How am I integrating it? How am I making meaning of it? And that sort of central hub with resources and conversations and support generally is run by a psychologist or a counselor or an HR specialist that's got skills in this area. That's also been incredibly helpful. So what hasn't worked? Sweeping things under the rug, not being clear on policies and structure with the new normal, not referring team members to the right places to get support, and not having somewhere that when I'm having a bad day, I can go look, I can go read. Because there's a lot out there, right? There's a lot of news articles and stuff, but it can be very overwhelming. So just creating a curated space for your team is really helpful.
Thanks a lot, Candice. I want to bring in Jonathan. And Jonathan, I want us to focus on an entrepreneur who's listening to us today and thinking, okay, you're talking about all these things. It sounds really great for people with bigger teams, but I'm just one person trying to run a whole ship with so many hats that I have to put on. I'm just wondering, how can entrepreneurs prioritize their wellness as well? You know, it's not just about having a team. We're talking about individuals here, but I feel like entrepreneurs wear special hats because they're all over the place, running a big ship, and they're the masters of this ship, almost running the radar as well, that directs the ship wherever it's going. And I'm just wondering how can we make this relevant to them, not only for teams, which is great, Candice, and we've addressed that in the context of a workplace. I'm just wondering, for an entrepreneur, how can this be realistic to them?
Thanks, Irene. I think one of the elements is to take charge of your life. Most of us are pushed around all day long. We're taking phone calls, messages, and we're having to respond to crises, etc. And that's a stressful situation. When you're not in charge of yourself, that adds to the stress. So take charge in some way or other. And that often has to do with how you use your time. Now, your time is at the mercy of others, but carve time out for the priorities. And Kavi spoke about the things that are important but not urgent. Don't neglect those. And those are the things we've been talking about, the sleep and the diet and the meditation, etc. So find time for those in your week and then fit the rest around that. And that could be, most of us don't have a lot of time for sitting, reflecting on things. So
that's true. But I'm glad you brought that up, because somebody's probably thinking, what are they saying? Sit down. I need to be hustling. I need to be in the streets. Go ahead.
But you could also say that we don't have time not to plan, because then we do the things that waste time. So rather spend a couple of minutes a day. It would be nice if you spent a few minutes a day centering and meditating and so on. If you can get yourself to do that, even if it's 2 minutes, it just gets your brain under your control rather than under control of the environment. And then think about today, what are my priorities? And what is suggested, I think, is a helpful thing, is to take a little bit longer once a week. It could be a Sunday evening, for example. Spend half an hour saying, what are my priorities for the week? We put them in my calendar. And then I can fit other things around that. So at least you feel you are doing the things that are most important. The kind of coping literature says that we cope better when we feel we are in control of what happens to us. And I could talk more about that if there were time. But that is taking control, planning your time, most of all, and what happens to you. Secondly, when you have a sense of meaning, we've spoken about that, why it's important to be doing what you're doing. So do the things that are important. The third area is what I've also spoken about, which is people. Is there someone in your life who can listen to you, who can speak to, and who can reflect things to you and help you to keep on an even keel? So that's another thing to make time for. Don't neglect the really important people in your life. Don't do that. Not only is it intrinsically important in itself, but it helps you to cope, and you help them to cope. So those are the things I would say you do, and then enjoy it. Our attitudes respond to the situations, but they also create the situations. And it has struck me. It really has struck me as I've looked at the lockdowns that we've been through, how some people have actually thrived through that situation. I love what you were saying, Candice, about what you've been able to show your clients. And so even things like physical health, some people are fitter now than they've ever been because they've made time to do their exercises. The sense of helplessness, which is so destructive. Other people have found ways to engage in the communities and provide food parcels and find meaning in what they're doing. Isolation has been a big factor for many people in lockdown, but other people have found that, well, Zoom means I can now connect with the family members I haven't spoken to in years and have created a sense of community. And in AMI, we found that connecting every day for a few minutes in the morning has broken down some of the silos that were evolving. We've got to know each other better. Different people have led those, and we've got to know other people's gifts. And it's been actually a really enriching, wonderful team building thing that we didn't have before. So how you respond to the situation can determine whether it's a positive or a negative experience.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just small steps, just small, simple practices that you can begin to do today. We're not talking about, a whole transformation in a day. It's just simple practices that you can start that form habits. So it's amazing. I want to bring in Betty into the conversation. As I do that, Betty Mahugu, I'd like to, there's an audience question for you, Candice. And I think a lot of people would stone me if I don't ask this. We're talking about Zoom, and Jonathan brought that up just now. And we do have a question from the audience that is talking about just Zoom fatigue and being overwhelmed, and the new normal being about, meetings after meetings on Zoom. How can people deal with that? I had an interesting concept about Zoom eyes, where people are finding stickers. I don't know if you guys have had it. They find stickers in magazine that match their eyes. So you might think you're speaking to Jonathan and Jonathan's paying attention to you, but Jonathan has this magazine clip-ins on his eyes because he's literally tired from different time zones. You're in a meeting, you feel like you're in a fix all the time. So Prudence is asking how can she find the balance?
Okay, so I think, so Zoom fatigue is a real thing. In fact, National Geographic had a really good article on it about a month or two ago that I shared with quite a few of our clients. And I think there's a couple of things that came out of that article that just anecdotally do seem to work. The one is try have more meetings with your video off. Yes, video on is very good from a social engagement perspective and building relationships, but you don't need to have it on for every single meeting. So definitely have meetings where your video is off and it's just voice. That's the one thing that helps with that fatigue. The other thing is try walking meetings. So again, video off, you can plug in earphones into Zoom. Zoom's got beautiful mobile app across all the devices. I take my dogs for a walk and have my Zoom meeting. And that I find also gets my physical health up. It gets me thinking a bit more creatively. I'm not just staring at the four walls there, but also just helps me in the meeting and not feel so fatigued after the meeting. And then I think just coming back to Jonathan's point about taking ownership, own your diary. And there's two important points to that. One is, and we speak about this in the AMI training. I didn't say I'm an AMI facilitator, just FYI. I actually do.
Well, no, you just did. She's part of the AMI family.
I know the program very well. Yeah.
Go ahead, Candice.
Yeah, carry on.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, it's the one thing I've, even as the business has grown, I've held on to because I love the AMI trainings and I still facilitate training at least once a month. And we speak about in the AMI about ownership or in the MDP management development program about ownership and knowing when to take on a task that's actually yours versus giving it back. And I think that is a key thing to managing your time and your diaries and meetings. You do not need to be in every single meeting you're invited to. So be very aware of that. And then think about when you want to have meetings. I mean, I deal with clients across a multiple size of businesses and areas of responsibility. And they don't mind when I say, actually, like 7 a.m. on a Monday morning doesn't quite work for me. Like, do you mind if we do this at 3 p.m. on Monday? Or, I prefer to keep my Friday afternoons open. Do you mind if we do this on Friday morning? I've yet to lose a client because I've said that. So don't be nervous of pushing back a little bit and managing and owning your diary and knowing what you need to be in and then structuring it at a time that's right for you. I've also had clients that have requested an hour and I've said to them, I don't think this needs an hour. We can do it in 30 minutes.
Yeah. So that's great. It means that managers also need to be able to provide a safety where people can actually come up and say, look, this is how I feel. I feel very overwhelmed at this point. So it's that psychological safety that I feel is somewhat missing in most companies. Jonathan, go ahead, Jonathan. I was actually going to.
I found it was a period where I was finding it almost impossible not to go to my emails when I was in a Zoom meeting. And that's a bad idea. Because research does show you can't actually do two things at one time. Certainly I know men can't, but even women find that difficult. If it's a meeting where you think you can do your emails, you probably shouldn't be in the meeting. And if it's a meeting that you shouldn't be doing your emails, then put them aside. And I've, like Candice, what I actually did was to take the meeting and my phone out to the garden and weed the lawn while I was in the meeting, because it gave me something to do which wasn't using my brain. So I could focus on the meeting, but I was away from the temptation of my keyboard.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Please keep sending in your
to try to do things at the same time. That's what really ties you. You focus on the meeting, but you're also doing your emails.
All right. I want to bring in Betty Mahugu from Go Tell Tours and Travels. I hope I got your company name correct, Betty. As Betty joins us, Please feel free to send us more questions. And if you have any comments, please feel free to share. Before I get into it, Betty, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your business.
Thank you, Irene. I was just getting tempted to touch my screen because I just got an email alert as what Jonathan is saying. So I just helped myself tempted to touch my screen just a minute ago. I'm happy to be in this conversation, and especially to be with Jonathan, who has become my wellness coach. Very happy for what I've gained from AMI during the COVID months, because it is during the COVID month that I learned to be more cautious about wellness. I didn't take wellness as a priority before, but now I do, thanks to Jonathan and AMI. I became an entrepreneur.
We promise this is not a paid advertisement. Betty, I have to say this. This is not a paid advertisement for AMI or Jonathan as a wellness coach. So thanks for that, Betty. We really appreciate that sentiment.
It is what I've gained from him. Really, I never took wellness as a priority. And you can imagine, having been an entrepreneur since 24, it has been a bumpy time. For entrepreneurs, what it means to be an entrepreneur is bumpy and hard. And I was just sharing with Jonathan another time that often I used to have very painful shoulder pain, stiff neck, and then from rice, of course, I'm not advertising again, I just got it well. And so thanks to Jonathan and thanks to rice. I started in 1995 after 1 year of working in a company and realizing that that's not what I was made for. I went to college and did what I did not like. And I knew this is not me. And so after 1 year of employment, I came out and began business. And I went into tourism and learned tourism in tourism. And I identified one area of our lives as Africans, because I'm an African, that lack of exposure, it becomes a holdback for great talents that we have in Africa are not exposed, and so they are not used. And just even not traveling is something that hold back great minds. And I would go to my own home village and find those people who are even masters, and PhDs, but they are not exposed. And they looked like every other person in the village. And I thought people need to get exposed. And so that's how I started Go Tell. And go is to go and to know something new and to come and tell that new thing that you have learned. And this is what we have done for years. So, of course, I was a youth when I was starting that. And I was supposed to be speaking to grown-ups and tell them, hey, you need to be exposed. You need to travel. You need to know more than what you know in your own village. And of course, we continued with that. And now we're doing more because we are redefining. And of course, I went to college to do tourism, and I'm still there. Yeah. I will never stop learning. And now we are redefining tourism and travel, and we are looking at sustainable tourism, and this is what we are doing right now, looking at Africa, the richness of the culture and nature in Africa, and looking at the rural communities and how that they have not benefited a lot from the culture and nature that is a tourism attraction in this continent. And so we are developing cultural tourism for rural development and rural communities.
Sounds exciting.
This is in a nutshell who I am and what we are doing, sitting in Rwanda right now with a few offices in different places. So of course I've grown over the years since 95 in tourism. And I can tell you I've learned a lot from wellness this time of COVID. I've never experienced a bump like the COVID bump. Of course, I've experienced many, but the COVID bump was the greatest, that, especially being in the tourism at this season. And so self-wellness has really helped me, because it's where I've learned to, first of all, take care of me, and also be able to take care of my my partners and those that we are working with. So it's a lot that I've learned from wellness, I think.
Thanks for that, Betty. And I just want to bring in Jonathan just to give us a little bit of context around RISE. What was the thinking behind RISE? I know it's a program designed for entrepreneurs, but what was the thinking around it?
Thank you. Well, it was a response to the pandemic, where we anticipated that people would be taking strain, as Betty has described. So we thought we would create a little space where business people could meditate, could reflect, and could discover that they're part of a broader community. And we started off with every weekday at 8:30 East African time, 7:30 Central African time, 6:30 West African time, with a 15-minute reflection. We recorded meditation to begin with, and some people thought that was a bit touchy-feely. So we called it a guided reflection, and it starts with a sort of 3 or 4 minute introduction that I give to a theme for that session, and then we have the guided reflection, which is based on relaxation, basically. So breathing, muscle relaxation, and then visualization, because when we relax, the pictures in our mind have particular valence, particular power to influence us. And we did that daily, and then we switched to weekly, because it's quite a difficult to get into Zoom every day. So we do it on a Monday morning at the moment, and then record the reflection, so people can stream reflection for the rest of the week at any time they like during each day. So they can then do the guided reflection. And we added at that stage on the Mondays a discussion, a Q&A and discussion. So after the reflection, we then stay on in Zoom, and I've got a few more thoughts usually to share on the theme, and then open it up for comments and questions. And Betty has been one of the more active participants, for which thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Betty. And so we deal with things like, the most recent one was in fact self-acceptance. Having followed the previous week, visualizing others and accepting them. So sort of building relationships on the basis of acceptance of other people. Then we've dealt with dealing with stress, with staying optimistic when you're in a crisis, keeping calm, resilience, and those sorts of topics as our weekly themes.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And people can plug into these sessions. They're available on our website. You can just go to our website and you can sign up for the next session. And you can also access them on our website. Before I let Candice go, I just wanted to find out, Candice, in your closing remarks, what is the one thing that you want to leave people with?
I think, what I mentioned earlier, you can't hold space for other people until you can hold space for yourself. And that stretches beyond just your team, your family, your friends, people that you care about. As they say on the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first. And that for me sums up emotional wellness. Start with yourself.
Thanks so much. And it was such a pleasure to have you. And there's so much that we can share around this topic. I really want to have you back. So thanks, Candice. Jonathan, any parting shots? Anything that an entrepreneur or somebody who's listening and thinking, oh, okay, so what is a practical step? What is my next step? What do I do next? What would you advise them?
Keep going, and you're not alone. Get help. If you need help, get help. Talk to people, and then take the next step. We see huge problems, and they are huge. There's no question about it, and they are threatening. But in any situation, there's always a next step you can take, and take that step. Even if it's just planning working out what I can and can't do, take control of it, and just one step in front of the other.
Betty, I want to come back to you. Just before your final thoughts, I just want to get into your mind as somebody who's been running a business for such a long time, and you're in the face of the COVID pandemic, and you decide to take a practical step, and your practical step was to join RISE. I just want to get into that. Is there an improvement that you've seen in how you relate with others? Is there something that you could tell an entrepreneur? I think not necessarily rise or whatever. I'm not necessarily recommending any program. I'm just asking, what exactly do you think that entrepreneurs need to be doing right now to take care of themselves, as you've alluded to?
Thank you, Irene. I think I would like to tell entrepreneurs, especially the young ones, because I started young, so I'm pretty much concerned about young entrepreneurs, and I like coaching young entrepreneurs, and because we don't have a lot of employment, we want young people to get into entrepreneurship. And I would like to tell everyone that there is so much knowledge out there. There is so much transformational knowledge that we yet do not have. And we need to go acquire it. It's important to acquire knowledge. I would never know that I need to take time for me, despite busy schedules and all the bumpy lifestyle of entrepreneurs. I need time for wellness, and what I learned now is helping me and helping others. I'm able to help others in my office. I have learned some things, just to regard others as important and infinitely worthwhile. And some of those statements have made people stay with me in the COVID months without a lot of money. We don't have money now to pay employees, and we have to maybe cut half the salaries. But because I have been able to show them what they are worthwhile, they feel that they need to be around a person who sees their worth. I have a case of one of my very senior employee who had an opportunity to go to another place for better pay, but he chose to stay with me because he said, I would rather stay where there is no much money, but there is much, I'm worth. They feel that I'm worth. So having work for yourself and extending it to the people around you, just showing them they are worthwhile. And this, of course, I believe we will extend it to the rural communities as we journey with our agenda of rural community development, just to show those people who are taking care of our nature and those who are taking care of our culture, which is a tourism attraction, that they are worthwhile. So by that, probably we will not have to struggle to get people to do conservation, because when you show them they are worthwhile in the rural community, then they know they are worthwhile, and they see the worthiness, and then they develop, or you instill in them purpose, even for conservation. So what I've learned is very important, not only for my business and office, but I'm going to extend it also to the communities in our journey of sustainable tourism. So I would like to tell entrepreneurs that there is a lot of transformational knowledge out there for them to seek, and everybody should seek knowledge. It's important.
Awesome. Jonathan, do you want to add something to that?
No, that's great. What's inspiring, what Betty is saying, is that one can serve one's interests in the business and serve the community at the same time. And of course, again, like wellness, those usually go together, because to the extent that we are seen to be caring for customers and the community, to the extent we earn people's involvement and the staff. It's an inspiring story of a person who would prefer to stay with you than go for a higher income somewhere else.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much. You guys have been fantastic. And I hope that to the audience that have been so engaging, I thank you so much for your time and for allowing us an opportunity to come into your space and to just share a little bit about our understanding of why emotional wellness is important. And I hope that through this journey, we've opened your mind to, taking care of yourself, prioritizing your own wellness. And before I sign off, I wanted to end with, like I already said, my favorite author is definitely Elaine Walteroth. I really love that book. If you can get a hold of More Than Enough, please do. There's a beautiful analogy that she uses about taking care of yourself and self-care. She says, bite off only what you can chew. Take one bite at a time. Chew thoroughly. Swallow fully. Breathe. Make room for the next bite. Find time to laugh. It's better for digestion. So wherever you are, whatever you are going through, whether as a business leader, an entrepreneur, an individual, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And I hope that you can prioritize yourself, put yourself first, take care of yourself, take your own oxygen mask before you can help the next person next to you. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. So with that said, if you want to get hold of any of the panelists today, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to me should you have any further questions about today's topic. And as always, thank you so much. This show is for entrepreneurs, by entrepreneurs, for you to enable you to thrive in every area of your life. So thank you very much for indulging me, and see you next time. Thank you.